Greetings. In this video I'll be covering white balance in Rawtherapee using a color checker, also just using a whiteboard here. I'd recently done some photos for myself. I was using the TT600 from Godox, also comparing the two different temperatures between the Godox TT685 and the TT600, which the color temperatures are quite different, and going into the program adjusting for those differences. In this video I'm not talking about mixing the lighting between the two, because we would get two different color temperatures on the product or the person that's being photographed, but just using one light at a time and using that as a key light and using the other light for an accent light. So with that out of the road, I'll open up the photo that I had produced. So this is the photo here. I just wanted to try this drink. I'd heard about it, was from New Zealand, so I gave it a try, saw it, and I decided to take a photograph. Looking at the drink here, if I come over to color management, we can see hues embedded. So this is the final photo that I came out with. This is just a JPEG in sRGB, the final output. I created a custom color profile using the color checker software, adjusting the white balance and finishing the editing from there. Opening up the image here, if we look at the vector scope on the left hand side here, so here on the drink, if I come up to the white patch here, the white on the image, and we can see on the vector scope to the left, it's almost dead center on the vector scope, so our white balance is on point there. And if we look at our yellows here on the drink, these ones here, if we look on the vector scope, we're also right on that line for our yellows, so it's done quite a good job there, not a bad result. So I'll just come back to our image here that we create our custom color profile. So if you don't have a color checker or a monitor calibrator, so you can also white balance your image without calibrating your monitor or having a color checker, but these are standardized colors for those colors to be accurate. If you've watched other videos, and other programs may use their own methods to calculate the colors within the program, but this is actually using the X-Rite software, creating your own profile and using that profile, and then going in white balance off these. So we can see in custom it says Panasonic S5 camera standard, but what I'll do is I'm going to use camera standard so most people can follow along, and then I'll go back and use the custom profile from X-Rite. So I'll click on camera standard. We can see here it flattens out the image using camera standard. We no longer have our tone curves, so if I just click it back here, we no longer have the tone curve associated with the camera standard for the Panasonic, also the lookup table and the baseline exposure. So, but all the same, I'll go to camera standard and I'll click on that, and we can see how flat that is. I'll come to the exposure, and what I'll do is I'll just click on auto matched and we'll see what we get. So not too bad. I'll come back to this shortly. I just want to go to the Rawtherapee website. It's back up to just look at a bit of information here on what we're doing. Okay, so we're on the Rawtherapee website and how to create a DCP color profile. So if we come down to color targets, we can see the options here that we have. We got the X-Rite Color Checker Passport, we have the X-Rite Color Checker Classic, we have Data Color, we have other options here depending on which color target that you have. But in this, in the description, shooting the color target, it assumes that you're using the X-Rite Color Checker Passport. So we can use these profiles within the program. Also, if I go over to the Color Checker Passport, so this is the manual that you can download and see. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this. So this is our standardized colors when it creates a profile. So they have produced color standards for the use in a range of industries, from science to commercial quality control tools. Each color is very closely monitored and controlled during the manufacturing process, so you can be confident your color references are exact. So the paper they print these on, it removes all those variants. For example, if you were to take a photo of a white sheet of paper, and that's your white balance. These patches here, if I have a look at the bottom row here, these are the 5 neutral greys. So we can click on these and be sure that this is a neutral grey. So we have our 18% grey. We also have our white here. And you can read up on this more, and also experimenting with the white balance patches within Rawtherapee, and we're going to do that. Also, we can see here on the color checker, we have references. So the patch here, we have the patches for skin tones, for lighter and darker skin tones. The second patch, the blue sky and the green foliage, we have here. The next set of patches here, these patches represent a variety of common natural tones and secondary colors. Here we have our red, green and blue, cyan, magenta and yellow. So when the software creates the profiles, we can be confident that these colors are going to be red, green and blue. So if somebody is wanting their colors to look like they were on that day, this is why these colors are standardized and we can use them. So let's go back to Rawtherapee. So back in Rawtherapee here. So here, as I mentioned, we're going to use camera standard. So we're going to white balance this image. In camera, I created a custom white balance using the whiteboard here. But what I want to do is use these patches to get more exact when it comes to our white balance. So to look at this image, you might think it's fine, depending on if your screen's calibrated or not. You may think, well, this is a decent white balance, and it's reasonable, but we're going to fine tune the white balance. First off, what I want to do is increase the values here on the target on this bottom row here. I want the white to be 90%, around about 50%. So what I'll do is come back to the exposure tab, and I'm going to come up to the lockable color picker, and we're going to use this tool. And first off, I'm going to click on here because this is the custom white balance I did in camera. So let's select that area, and I'll hold down Control and right click to make that as large as possible. So we can see on the values there, 84.3, 84.3, 84.3. So this is, for myself, is to be expected because the camera created this custom white balance, and this is what Rawtherapee is actually showing me. That white balance in the camera did a good job, according to the whiteboard there. Now, I know this is not a perfect white, it's not a neutral white, but that's what I had, and we can use the color checker to correct that. So next I'm going to click on the white patch here, and again I'm going to hold down Control and right click and enlarge that here. So I want this value to be 90, and on the 18% grey, hold down Control, right click again, we can see there 50%, and that's where I want that value to be, 50%. I want this one to be 90, but I'm not so concerned about this value here. I just want to use these two values here. So to make it simple, if I want to use the tone curve to increase this, grab hold of the tone curve here and try and lift it so we're at 90%. There we go, 90%, 90%, and 88. So we can see the different colors in the color target. If we look up the custom white balance that was created in camera, we can still see it's 86.7 through red, green and blue. We can see on the white patch here, we're 92, 92 and 86. So we're off on our values, so our blue's off. Also on our 50% or 18% grey, we're also off with our blues. Next, if we look up at the vector scope here, and the white balance looks fine according to what we see at the moment. Our eyes adjust, and this is what we see with our eyes. But using the reference patches here, you'll see a little bit different. So on the vector scope here, if we hover over our custom white balance in camera, we can see it's almost dead center on the vector scope there. So we have a look there, very central there. But if we come down to the white patch, we can see it's starting to lift up on the yellow here. So again, I'll just hover over that section and we can see it's climbing up on the yellow there. If I hover over the 50%, we can see it's lifting up there as well. Not as high, but we can see that. So again, on the white, and if we hover over the grey here, we can see it's lifted up slightly. So let's go back over to the color tab here, and we'll right click on white balance. We'll collapse this one, and we'll choose our color picker here. Now there's one other method I've used. I've created my own value for this. So I actually do this first. Created a value in the RGB curves to compensate for this as well. So if I just click on the RGB curves, we can see the change there. It's reasonably close. If I turn that back off, we can see the change there. And we can adjust this. So if I open up the RGB curves, I go to blue, and we can concentrate on this here. 92, 92, 92, and we're right on that 90% value here on the white. But that's just one of the other methods I'll use if I think I need to. So if I turn that back off, turn it back on, we can see it gets our values in there, because we know this has been designed for neutral. And again, if I turn that off, we can see the yellow color cast now. If we look at the vector scope here on the left, if I hover over there again, we can see where we're rising up on that yellow here. If I activate the RGB with the adjustment that we made, we can see there, right in the center there. I'll just turn that off and back on. So I'll turn that off for now, and I'll minimize that. I'll come back to the white balance tool. So I'll click on that, and I want to use white. You can use your neutral gray. You can use your 50% gray. We'll do that first, and we can keep an eye on the vector scope, but we'll see the change once again. So here, 50%, we can see there, 49.8, 49.8, 49.8. So it's equal across the board here. Also, if we look over to our RGB channels, we can see the values here. So if I hover over that, we can see there, 52, 52, 52. If we move 49.4, we can see the values there. They're very close. And this is the adjustment that we have. So let me go back. So there's our values for our grey patch. And there's our adjustment there. So it's leveled that out. And now we have our white balance. So now if we look on the values here for the custom white balance in camera, we can see the changes made. We can see the blue value has changed. So here on our color target that is designed to be neutral, now we're equalized here. But it does a reasonable job even on the whiteboard there. And we can make changes as we go, as you've seen using the RGB curves as well, depending what tools we have at hand. And just a reminder, when it comes to white balance, this is just a starting point where we start off, and then once we've created our custom profile, we'll copy this, put it across our set of images, and then start our editing from there. Then we start making our creative choices, whether we want to warm the image up, whether we want to create more contrast, color toning, or whatever the person has in mind. This is just the starting point. But if we're doing product photography, we want the colors to be accurate, and this is why these are designed. Color accuracy is mined when using these color targets. Also, with these values here, we can just hold down the shift button. We can click on here, and we can see the values here. So the LAB values, we've got the 53.1, and we've got 0000, so it's neutralized here. Let's remove these here. So now what I'm going to do is use the custom profile within the program. So instead of using camera standard, I'm going to go to custom, open up the folder. So when you create your custom profile, you need to know where your folder is to put them. And this is for the TT600, the Godox. I'm going to apply the target here, and we can see the difference in colors, the saturation, the vibrance within the image. So if I just go back one step, we can see this is the camera standard. As I mentioned, this is what the Rawtherapee program produces as their camera standard. And then the custom profile by the color checker software. This is the standardized colors. So let's click on that and we can see changes within the colors there. So let's go back again. We can see the blues and the red change. Very different colors. Our skin tones here. So if we look at our vector scope again, and I hover over this tone here, we can see we're very close to that skin tone line. And if I hover over my fingers here, we can see very close there. Of course, we have a darker skin tone here. It's just on the opposite side of that skin tone line. And this one here is just on the bottom half of that skin tone line there, so very close. So on to the next image. So if you're finding this video a little bit long, this is a bit of an explanation, and I've been working with the TT600 and seeing how close I can get the colors between the 600 and the 685. You can see here I've got written SU, so I've used a silver umbrella for this target, also for the 685. So let's go ahead and use the same method. I'm going to use the color management. I'm going to go into the options here. Here's my TT600 that I created for this image. You can see there it has no custom tone curve. I'll come back to here and I'll just click auto match for this, so we can see here the colors it gives us. So if I go back to the loaded photo, we can see the color patches there. Very different. Now the standardized colors for the color checker software, we can see there the colors that it gives us here. So now we'll go to the color tab. We'll click on our color picker and we'll use the white this time. Click on that. We can see the change there. So let's go to the 685. Sorry about the computer. I've got a few programs running at once. So once again, color management. So this is the camera standard once again. I'll go to the location where my profile is, the 685, so I'll open that. Once again, we need to create a custom tone curve, so let's go to auto matched. I'll let that take care of itself. So back to our colors, our white balance, I'm going to use white. There's our adjustment. So this is the color target, the X-Rite profile. If we look on the vector scope here again, if we hover over the custom white balance in the camera, we're right in the middle of that vector scope. But if we come on to the white patch here, we can see where it's coming off to the side here on the vector scope. This is what I was talking about earlier, how the different color temperatures of the two different flash. So 600 was rising up on the yellow channel there. If we come here, we can see it's starting to go towards that red there. So let's click on that white patch, and now if we hover over here, we're in the center of that vector scope. So if I go back between the two, so when I change the image here, you're going to see a difference in the way that the light is falling on the board. I accidentally knocked the board, but for this test, I'm not too concerned. It's more the color accuracy and the white balance, how close are they. So you'll see a different fall off of the light between the left side and the right side. So let's change from the 685 to the 600. So if we look at the patch here, we can see the light fall off here to the right. And here, the light fall off is to the left. So let me scroll in here. We'll look at these patches a little more closely and we can see how close they are. So we can see they're very close. So it's done quite a good job. You can see it's a lot flatter here, the image, because I bumped the board a little bit. It's not lit as evenly as the previous one, the TT600, but the colors look so close to me. Let's go back again. You can see the colors there. So that's a look at using white balance in Rawtherapee using two different flash models, the Godox TT600 and the 685. They have different color temperatures, how we can white balance them. As I mentioned, using an in-camera custom white balance for both flashes using this board, and then having our color target to neutralize those because they're specifically designed without having any color variance in there. So if you liked the video, you got something out of it, please give us a thumbs up for encouragement, and peace be unto you.